He kissed me goodbye that morning, the same way he always did. Soft, habitual, almost mechanical. And as the door clicked shut behind him, I remember thinking, that kiss felt colder than usual. It's strange, isn't it, how the smallest things begin to whisper before the storm ever speaks. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the half-empty coffee cup he left behind, the faint lip mark fading along the rim. The sunlight had spilled across our table, turning the world golden for a moment. I should have felt peace. Instead, I felt hollow. My name is Claire. I'm 34 years old, marketing manager, wife of 6 years. And I thought I had the kind of marriage that survived ordinary storms, deadlines, arguments, long nights. I thought love, once promised, stayed loyal. I was wrong. That morning felt off, like a song slightly out of tune. He had been coming home later lately, saying things like, "Just one more meeting," or "I promise to help my colleague with a presentation." I wanted to believe him. God, I did believe him. Because that's what love does. It blinds you with its own reflection. But lately, he'd been smiling less, touching less. His eyes, once soft and mischievous, had started looking through me, not at me. I told myself it was work, stress, maybe he was tired. I told myself so many lies to protect the one truth I wasn't ready to face. That night, I made dinner, pasta, his favorite. He barely touched it. He said he'd eaten already, with the team. I nodded, pretending not to notice that his shirt smelled faintly of someone else's perfume. A sweet, heavy scent, not mine. I laughed it off, even teased him about his new cologne. He smiled, a small, crooked, guilty smile that didn't reach his eyes. I should have asked then. I should have screamed, demanded, cried. But instead, I washed the dishes and told myself everything was fine. The human heart is strange. It knows before it admits, but it waits until the pain becomes undeniable. A week later, I found the first crack. He was in the shower, humming. His phone buzzed on the counter, that same buzzing that had become so constant it was almost background noise. Normally, I wouldn't care, but that day, the screen lit up, and for some reason, I looked. A message, just one, from a contact saved under a single letter, A. Last night was perfect. I can still taste you. My hands went cold. My throat tightened. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. I wanted to believe it was a joke, a mistake, a wrong number. Anything but what it was. But deep down, I knew. Every late night, every distracted smile, every cold kiss, they all pointed here. I put his phone down before he came out. My reflection in the mirror looked pale, lifeless. He came out of the shower, towel around his waist, humming that same stupid tune. "Everything okay?" he asked. And somehow, I smiled. "Yes," I whispered. "Everything's fine." That night, I lay beside him, pretending to sleep, while he turned away, texting someone in the dark. My heart broke, not loudly, not dramatically. It cracked quietly, like glass under pressure. Every day after that, I watched him, his eyes, his tone, his movements. The distance between us grew like a wound. He stopped saying "I love you," and I stopped believing I ever knew what love meant. A few days later, I tried to confront him, gently, carefully. "Is there something you want to tell me?" I asked over dinner. He looked up, confused or pretending to be. What do you mean? You've been different lately, distant. He sighed, that deep, weary sigh people give when they're tired of lying but not ready to tell the truth. Claire, I've just been stressed. Don't start imagining things. Imagining things. The words hit harder than any confession could. So I apologized. I actually apologized. Told him I trusted him. And that night, he kissed me again. Soft, mechanical, distant. But this time, I didn't close my eyes. I kept them open and saw him for what he really was. A stranger wearing my husband's face. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of silence pressing down on me. At 2:47 a.m., I got up, went to the living room, and opened my journal. It had been years since I'd written in it, not since college. But the words came like blood from an open wound. He's lying to me, and I'm too afraid to know the truth. I sat there until dawn, shaking, numb, whispering the same question to myself over and over. Why wasn't I enough? When the sun came up, I poured him coffee again, the same way I always did. And as he kissed me goodbye, I smiled and said, "Have a good day." He smiled back and went straight to her bed. It's been 11 days since that message. 11 mornings of pretending. 11 nights of silence. I've become an actress in my own home, rehearsing smiles, scripting laughter, memorizing lines like, "It's okay, I understand," when nothing is okay, and I understand everything. He doesn't know I saw it, the message. Or maybe he does. Maybe that's part of the game now. He still kisses me goodbye every morning, still says, "Don't wait up," and I still nod. But every time the door closes, I sit there, staring at it, like maybe if I watch long enough, I'll see the truth bleeding through the wood. I used to love the sound of his car starting. Now it sounds like betrayal on 4 wheels. I tried to be rational at first, told myself I was paranoid, that maybe A was just a friend, but friends don't taste each other. He started taking longer showers, always locking the door, always humming that same stupid tune. He used to sing it to me. Now it just echoes in the bathroom like a ghost of what we used to be. I began watching him closer. The way his fingers lingered on his phone. How he always tilted the screen away. The quick smile, gone as soon as he realized I was looking. I started timing him, the seconds he spent in the driveway, sitting in the car before coming inside. The time between his last text and his "I'm home." It's madness what suspicion does to the mind. It eats you slowly, gently, until you can't tell the difference between paranoia and truth. Last night, while folding laundry, I found a hotel receipt in his jacket pocket. 2 glasses of wine, a suite, 9:37 p.m. The name on the receipt wasn't his, but the signature? God, I knew that handwriting. I didn't cry, not right away. I just stared at it, the ink trembling under my fingers. And in that moment, something inside me went still, like the calm before a storm that knows exactly where it's going to hit. When he came home, I asked where he'd been. He said, "You wouldn't believe how long the meeting ran." I almost laughed. Almost told him I had the receipt in my pocket, still warm from my hand. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I leaned forward, kissed him softly, and whispered, "You look tired." He nodded, grateful, like the guilty always are when you don't accuse them. Later that night, I watched him sleep. His face was peaceful, innocent, infuriatingly calm. How do people sleep so soundly while killing something sacred? I used to think betrayal was an explosion, loud, violent, final. But it's not. It's a slow bleed. It's the 1,000 tiny cuts that never stop aching. Every morning now feels like theater. I make breakfast. He scrolls through his phone. I smile. He smiles back. And between us, the silence stretches like a noose. Today, while cleaning the bedroom, I noticed his phone buzzing on the dresser. My heart sprinted before my hands even moved. Another message. From A. I miss the way you said my name last night. My knees almost gave out. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor, and for one stupid second, I prayed it would break, that the proof would shatter before I could read more. But it didn't, and I did. He came in seconds later, saw me, the phone in my hand, his eyes wide, calculating, cold. What are you doing? I froze. I was just cleaning. It fell. He snatched it from me, muttered something about privacy, and stormed out. Privacy. That word cut deeper than any confession could. I didn't chase him. I didn't cry. I just stood there, watching the door, realizing that the man I loved now had secrets sharp enough to draw blood. When he came back an hour later, everything was fine again. Dinner, small talk, the illusion of peace. But I could feel it, that tension under his skin, the weight of the lie pressing against every word. He looked at me across the table and said, "You've been quiet lately." And I wanted to scream because I'm dying inside. But instead, I said, "Just tired." He reached for my hand. It was the first time in weeks he'd touched me without reason. For a second, I almost believed he felt guilty. And maybe he did. But guilt doesn't undo betrayal. It just perfumes it. I waited until he went to bed before writing this. My pen feels heavier every night. I used to write about love, how it made me feel safe, seen, wanted. Now, every word feels like a wound reopening. Love doesn't die all at once. It suffocates slowly under the weight of someone else's lies. Tomorrow, I'll find out who A is. I don't know how yet. Maybe I'll check his phone while he sleeps. Maybe I'll follow him. But I need to know, even if it kills me. Because right now, not knowing hurts worse than the truth ever could. I didn't sleep last night. The clock said 3:47 a.m., and I was still lying there, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between his breaths. He was next to me, his body warm, his breathing slow, but I couldn't feel him anymore. I kept wondering, who were you dreaming about? This morning, I made coffee, but the taste of bitterness had nothing to do with the beans. He left early, said he had a work presentation out of town. Out of town? That phrase used to mean hard-working. Now it means cheating. I watched him pack a bag. His cologne filled the room. That same scent that used to make me weak. Now it made me sick. He kissed my forehead before leaving. That's when I knew. Guilt always makes people gentle. As soon as the door closed, I stood there for a long time, just listening, to the silence, to the sound of my heart breaking, quietly, politely, as if it didn't want to wake the neighbors. I told myself I wouldn't follow him, that I wasn't that kind of woman. But by noon, my hands were already trembling around the steering wheel. I drove carefully, keeping a few cars behind his.
I almost laughed at how absurd it felt. Me, in my own little car, tailing my husband like some desperate detective in a movie. Except this wasn't a movie. There was no music, no audience, no clean ending. Just the heavy, pounding beat of my own pulse. He didn't go to the office. He didn't go out of town. He stopped at a small hotel by the highway, the kind of place people use when they don't want to be seen. My breath caught when I saw her. A woman, younger, long dark hair, a red coat. She looked familiar, not because I knew her, but because she looked like the version of me he used to love. I watched them from my car. He laughed, that real laugh, the one I hadn't heard in months. He touched her face like she was something precious. Then they disappeared into the building. I sat there for 30 minutes, maybe an hour. Time stopped meaning anything. The rain started. I rolled down the window, just enough to let the cold in, to feel something that wasn't rage. I thought I'd cry. I didn't. Tears are for when there's still hope left. When he finally came out, his shirt untucked, hair messy, I thought, that's the man I promised my life to. And now he belonged to someone else, a stranger in a red coat. I drove home before he could see me, parked in the driveway, sat there, and laughed. A soft, broken, hysterical laugh that scared even me. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't just heartbroken. I was done. He came home hours later, whistling. He smelled of rain and perfume that wasn't mine. I asked, softly, "How was your trip?" He said, "Tiring," and smiled. That smile, that calm, lying smile, felt like a blade pressed against my skin. After dinner, he went to shower. I stood outside the bathroom door and listened to the sound of the water. That's when I said it, softly, almost to myself. I know. He didn't hear me, but it didn't matter, because I heard it. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something like power. Later that night, when he was asleep, I took his phone. The password was the same. He never thought I'd dare. There they were, the messages. "Can't wait to see you again. You make me forget who I am." She doesn't suspect anything. That one, that last one, burned into me. She doesn't suspect anything. How funny. How wrong. I didn't delete anything. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Because I wanted him to watch me leave. To see what it feels like to lose everything, one heartbeat at a time. I began packing that night, quietly, one drawer, one memory at a time. Every shirt, every picture frame, every trace of us, folded, boxed, erased. I left his ring on the nightstand. And a note, just 5 words. "You made me remember pain." When he woke, I wanted him to see it first.
To know the silence he created could speak louder than any scream. But I didn't go far, not yet, because endings deserve to be witnessed. Tomorrow, I'll tell him, face to face, calm, cold. I'll make him look me in the eyes when he realizes that the woman he betrayed is the one he will never forget. He took my love for granted. Now, I'll make him watch me take it back. The house smelled like rosemary and roasted garlic that night. He loved when I cooked, said it made him feel at home. The irony almost made me laugh. I set the table like I always did. Candles, wine, 2 plates. Everything looked perfect. Perfection, I realized, was just another disguise. When he walked through the door, he paused. He looked at the food, at me in my black dress, and smiled that same easy lying smile. "Wow," he said, "what's the occasion?" I said softly, "You'll see." He didn't notice the way my hands trembled as I poured the wine, didn't notice that my lipstick was too dark, the kind you wear to a funeral, not a dinner. We ate in silence for a while. The clinking of silverware was the only sound. I watched him chew, sip, breathe. All the things I used to love, now unbearable. Finally, he asked, "Is something wrong?" I smiled. "No," I said, "not anymore." He tilted his head, confused, but went back to eating. I wanted to scream, to throw the glass, to claw at him until he saw me, the woman who once would have done anything for him. But I didn't. I had learned that silence can be sharper than any blade. I reached into my pocket and slid my phone across the table. He looked at it, puzzled. "It's unlocked," I said. "Go ahead." He hesitated, then picked it up. The screen was already open to his messages, the ones I'd read last night. His face drained of color. "Where did you get this?" he asked, voice low. "Where do you think?" He stammered something about misunderstanding, about work, about her, being just a friend. I let him talk. I wanted to hear how many lies he could stack on top of each other before they collapsed. When he finally stopped, I leaned forward, my voice steady. "Do you know what the cruelest thing you did to me was? It wasn't the cheating. It was making me believe I was the problem, making me question my worth while you laughed behind my back." He tried to reach for my hand. I pulled it away. That tiny motion, the recoil, said everything. The air felt heavy, like the walls were holding their breath. He whispered, "It didn't mean anything." That was the moment I broke, but not into pieces. I broke open, and everything I had held inside came pouring out. "It meant everything," I shouted. "Every lie you told, every night you came home smelling like someone else, it meant something. Because you chose it. You chose her. You chose to humiliate me." Tears burned down my cheeks, but I didn't hide them. For the first time, I wanted him to see my pain, not to pity it, but to feel how small it made me. He tried to stand up. I said, "Sit," and he did. That was when I realized he was scared. Not of me, but of losing the control he'd always had. I poured more wine, my hand trembling slightly. Then, calmer now, I said, "Do you remember our wedding night? You told me I was the safest place you'd ever known." He nodded, eyes down. "And yet," I said, "you set fire to that place yourself." The silence stretched between us. The candles flickered, and for the first time, he couldn't look at me. "You know what's funny?" I said softly. "I don't even hate you. I just don't recognize you anymore." He reached across the table again, desperate. "Please, we can fix this." I stood. "No," I said. "You can't fix something you destroyed on purpose." I walked to the bedroom and came back holding a small suitcase. His confusion turned to fear. "You're leaving?" I smiled. "Not yet." He blinked. I set the suitcase down and looked at him. Really looked. The man I once thought was my forever. And then, slowly, deliberately, I said the words I'd been saving. "You cheated. So I'm going to make you watch me leave." He looked lost, like a man suddenly realizing the game was over. But I wasn't finished. "You don't get to cry. You don't get to beg. You'll sit right there. The emptiness, the silence, the loss. Because that's what I've lived with every night you were gone." I turned off the candles one by one. The room dimmed,
until only the glow from the streetlights remained. Then I whispered, almost gently, "Dinner's over." I took my suitcase, walked to the door, and didn't look back. Because some goodbyes aren't meant to be witnessed. They're meant to echo. When the door shut behind me, I didn't feel free. Not yet. Freedom doesn't come the moment you leave. It comes the moment you stop looking back. But as I stepped into the cold night air, something in me shifted. The pain didn't vanish. It just stopped owning me. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew this. He would remember this night forever. The night I stopped begging to be loved. The night I taught him what losing me really felt like. It had been 3 days since I left. 3 days since I walked out without looking back. The strange part? The world didn't stop. The sky still turned blue in the morning. Coffee still tasted better. The birds still sang. But I felt like a ghost walking through the ruins of a life that used to be mine. Every morning, I'd wake up and expect his voice, the casual good morning he'd always throw over his shoulder. Now, all I heard was silence. And I realized that silence is never truly empty. It's full of echoes. On the 4th day, he came. I heard the knock before I saw him. It wasn't hesitant. It was desperate. When I opened the door, he looked wrecked, unshaven, eyes red, wearing the same clothes he'd had on 2 days before. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize him. He didn't speak, just stared at me, like he was trying to memorize me, afraid I might disappear. Finally, he whispered, "Please, don't shut the door." I didn't, but I didn't step aside either. He swallowed hard. I haven't slept. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see you walking away. I said nothing. He went on, words tumbling over themselves. I was stupid. It didn't mean anything. I panicked. I don't even know why I did it. Please, just come home. Home. Funny how that word used to feel warm. Now it burned like acid. I crossed my arms. "Home?" I said quietly. "You mean your home? Because the moment you betrayed me, it stopped being mine."
He tried to reach for my hand again, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said. My voice was calm, too calm, because when a woman stops yelling, she's already made her decision. He exhaled shakily, eyes shining. "I'll do anything. I'll change. I'll tell her it's over. I'll go to therapy. I'll—" "Stop," I said sharply. "You had all those choices before I left." His lips trembled. "Please, don't punish me like this. Punish him." As if I had done something to him. The irony almost made me laugh. "I'm not punishing you," I said. "I'm just finally choosing myself." He broke, then really broke, dropped to his knees right there in the doorway, cried like a child. It was the kind of sobbing that shakes the body, the kind that comes when a man realizes he's lost something he can't replace. For a long time, I just stood there, watching him, because once upon a time, I had been the one begging for his time, his attention, his love. Now the roles were reversed, and it was almost poetic. Finally, I crouched down, looked him in the eyes, and said, "This is what betrayal looks like when it comes back for you. You think it's over when the affair ends, but it's only just beginning." He shook his head, tears streaking his face. "You're my life. I can't lose you." "You already did," I said. He reached for me again, a final, frantic grasp, but I stood, letting his hands slip through the air. He stayed on the floor, crumpled, small. I looked down at him one last time and said softly, "You wanted freedom. You got it." And then, for the second time, I closed the door.
This time, there were no tears, only a strange calm, the kind that comes when you finally understand that pain isn't meant to be avoided, it's meant to teach. That night, I wrote in my diary, "Love doesn't die in one moment. It dies quietly, piece by piece, every time trust is broken. And when it's gone, there's no bringing it back, no matter how loud the apologies." The next morning, I opened the curtains. Light spilled across the room, soft, clean, new. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was standing in someone else's story. This one was mine again. There are things you never say out loud, words that live in your throat but never find air. This part of my story belongs to those words. I started writing letters again, not to send, just to remember what honesty feels like. The first one began like this: "Dear you, I hate that I still think of you when it rains." I wrote that one a week after he came to my door, a week after I watched him collapse in front of me, the man who once made me feel invincible, now begging like a stranger I barely recognized. I didn't send it, of course, I never do, but writing it made the ache quieter, like bleeding the poison out through ink. The truth is, I still wake up some nights expecting his voice. I still glance at the empty side of the bed. I still hear songs that remind me of the mornings we used to make pancakes, of the way he'd hum tunelessly while flipping them, pretending not to burn the edges. And I still remember the small things, the smell of his shirt, the way he'd tuck my hair behind my ear when I was angry, the way he'd say, "You're my calm," before turning into the storm himself. Love doesn't disappear just because it hurts. It lingers like smoke in a room long after the fire's gone. But what surprised me most wasn't that I missed him. It was that I missed who I was before all of this. I missed the version of me who still believed people meant what they said. The woman who didn't overthink every silence, who didn't double-check every smile. The one who believed that love could survive anything. Now I know better. Love can survive pain, but it cannot survive betrayal. That realization, that quiet, devastating truth, became my anchor. I remember sitting by the window one night, pen in hand, writing my second letter. "Dear you, I don't forgive you yet, but I'm learning how to stop needing to." That one hit harder. Because forgiveness isn't a gift you give the other person. It's something you give yourself so you can breathe again. For months, I carried the weight of what he did like armor. I told myself it made me strong, that being unbreakable meant I was winning. But I was wrong. Strength isn't about never breaking. It's about learning how to rebuild without bitterness. And slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild. I changed the locks, deleted the photos, donated his clothes. But there was one thing I couldn't throw away: the keychain he'd given me on our first anniversary. It was small, silver, shaped like a compass. He'd said, "So you always find your way back to me." Now, I keep it in a drawer, not as a token of love, but as a reminder that I did find my way back, not to him, but to myself. Sometimes I wonder what he's doing now, if he ever really understood the weight of what he destroyed, if he lies awake remembering the way I looked at him the night everything fell apart. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. It doesn't matter anymore, because the third letter I wrote, the one I never finished, began with something different. "Dear me, I'm proud of you." That was the first time I'd written to myself, and it felt strange to be gentle with the same person I'd blamed for staying too long, for trusting too deeply, for not seeing the signs sooner. I realized then that I'd spent so long hating myself for being naive, when really, I should have been proud for having loved with my whole heart. Because that's what love should be: full, unguarded, real. Even if it breaks you, even if it ends badly, it means you felt something true in a world where so many people never do. Sometimes healing doesn't look like smiling. Sometimes it looks like sitting in the quiet, writing words no one will ever read, and realizing you're still here. And I am. I'm still here, still standing, still breathing, still learning how to exist without the ache. When I look back now, I don't see him as the villain anymore. He was just weak, human, flawed. And I was the lesson he never learned. Maybe one day he'll remember the way I looked at him that last night, not with anger, but with sorrow. And maybe that will haunt him more than any revenge ever could. Because I didn't scream, I didn't beg, I didn't destroy his things or expose him. I simply walked away. And that silence, that unbearable, unbroken silence, will follow him longer than my love ever did.
The last line I wrote in my diary that night was simple. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Just leave, quietly, and let them watch what they lost. It's been 3 years. Sometimes I forget how it felt, the heat of that night, the sound of my own heartbreak breaking. Time softens things. Pain becomes quieter, like a song you used to love but can no longer remember all the lyrics to. I've moved twice since then. New city, new job, new faces that don't know the woman I used to be. It's strange how easily you can start over once you stop waiting for someone to come back. Every morning I wake up before the sun, open the curtains, and let the light spill in. It used to feel like a luxury. Now it feels like proof. Proof that I made it through something that should have destroyed me. There are moments, small, unexpected ones, when I still think of him, when I pass a cafe that smells like cinnamon, when I hear the same kind of laugh he used to have, when someone holds a cup of coffee the way he did, 2 hands wrapped around it like it was something fragile. But it doesn't hurt anymore. It's just a flicker, a ghost brushing past my ribs, then gone again. I used to think closure came from knowing why he cheated, why he lied, why he let something so good rot from the inside. But closure doesn't come from them. It comes when you stop asking questions you already know the answers to. He cheated because he could, because it was easy, because he thought I'd never find out, and maybe because somewhere deep down he never really believed I'd leave. But I did, and that's what saved me. There's a certain kind of peace that comes when you finally realize you don't need to win. You don't need to prove anything or make them see what they've done. Sometimes walking away is the revenge, because you take everything they took for granted, your love, your laughter, your warmth, and you give it to yourself instead. People ask me if I ever loved again. The answer is yes, but differently. Not the kind that burns and consumes, the kind that grows slowly, like sunlight through the trees, steady, patient, real. I met him on a quiet afternoon in a bookstore. He asked me what I was reading. I lied and said it was something philosophical when it was actually a trashy romance novel. He smiled anyway. That was the first time I'd smiled without guilt in years. He knows about my past. Not every detail, but enough. And sometimes when he looks at me, I can tell he sees the scars behind the calm. He never asks me to explain them. He just stays. And that's enough. I think that's what healing really looks like. Not the absence of pain, but the ability to let someone touch the places that used to hurt without flinching. Sometimes I still write in my diary, not to him anymore, but to the woman I used to be,
The one who begged for scraps of love, who mistook attention for affection, who thought endurance was the same as devotion. If I could talk to her now, I'd tell her this: you didn't fail. You just outgrew the version of love that couldn't hold you. Because she didn't deserve betrayal. No one does. But she also didn't deserve to stay broken forever, and now she isn't. I've learned that healing doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, boring, quiet. It's drinking your coffee alone without feeling lonely. It's listening to love songs without bitterness. It's smiling at your reflection and realizing you look peaceful. There was a time I thought I'd never feel peace again, that every love story after him would be a compromise. But I was wrong. Peace comes when you finally stop chasing what left. Sometimes, at night, I still hear the echo of his voice, like a ghost wandering through old memories. But I don't answer anymore, because the woman I was then, she's gone too, and in her place is someone stronger, quieter, and infinitely freer. The last entry in my journal, the one I wrote last week, says this: if he ever thinks of me, I hope he remembers the silence, the calm after the storm, the woman who didn't beg, who simply walked away and never looked back. I think that's the legacy I want to leave behind. Not the story of betrayal, but the story of what comes after. The story of a woman who learned that love doesn't end with heartbreak, it just changes shape. And if someone out there listening to this, watching this, reading this, is still trapped in that place I once was, I want them to know this: you will survive it, even when you think you won't, even when it feels impossible to breathe. One day, you'll wake up and realize the pain doesn't own you anymore. That's the day you'll know you finally come home to yourself.